For the last 5 years since I've come out, I've been working to feel queer enough. And I'm happy to say that I've finally figured out how to feel secure in my queerness. And I'm going to tell you how I got there. Whether you've just come out or you've been out for a while and you're still struggling with this feeling of not being queer enough, I want to look into the deeper layers of it today. So when you don't feel queer enough, you may have this idea that you need to cut your hair short, maybe dye your hair pink, or put a streak of fun color in your hair. That's a real suggestion I read on Reddit, is put a streak of color in your hair to signal to people that you're gay. That's really stupid. Maybe you think you need to get an undercut or shave half your head, shave your whole head, get a double nose piercing or a rainbow tattoo, buy all the flannels at the thrift store so that you will look queer enough. Despite what you may see in videos on TikTok, there's not a certain look for it. The more that we narrow in on this is what a lesbian looks like, this is how you look more gay, the more that we're really isolating a lot of people in the community. And to think that a whole group of people could be reduced down to like khaki shorts and a jersey and a backwards hat is insane to me. So, despite what you may see on the internet, feeling queer enough is not about performing an aesthetic. It's about releasing internalized homophobia. By the way, I'm Danny. I'm a queer sexologist, and I specialize in guiding the sapphic community through intimacy blocks like shame and trauma into confidence, ease, and freedom in and out of the bedroom. I am very familiar with this topic. I obviously am Femme presenting, and so I would Google how to look more gay, how to dress like a lesbian, lesbian outfits, lesbian haircuts, because I had this idea that now that I've come out as a lesbian, I need to start dressing differently. I need to start acting differently. There are even some people that lower their voice because they're trying to come across as more gay, as if gay even has a sound. Like, come on, people. The internet really pisses me off sometimes. What I was really doing was swapping dressing for the male gaze for dressing for the female gaze, as if just dressing for myself wasn't an option. I was still coming from this place of, how can I dress in a way to make other people perceive me as attractive, desirable, and worthy? And that's a problem. Whether you're straight or gay, that is not the way to do it. So you can think of it like trying to paint a landscape on a canvas. Maybe you're looking at this beautiful fall landscape. There are these trees that are red and orange and yellow, and the sky is a bright blue, and there are all these beautiful colors that you can't wait to capture on your canvas. But then someone hands you a color palette that has black, brown, and beige. And you're like, oh, well, maybe landscapes are just supposed to be these colors. And so you try to translate what you see on your canvas with these three colors because that's the palette you were given, so you do your best with it. This palette that's really limiting your individual expression, having this stereotype, what it means to be queer, is the same way. It really narrows your perspective of what is, quote, queer enough to wear and look like and act like. It also represents society's very narrow expectations of what a queer person should or is supposed to be like. And this desire to feel queer enough, it really makes a lot of sense because we all want to belong and feel connected to a community and to be affirmed by the people around us. We get our ideas of queerness from media, which is really lacking. It is getting better these days, which I appreciate, but it's still lacking, and growing up, it was virtually non-existent, except for Ellen on her talk show. The lesbians that we see in movies are most often written through the perspective of a straight person. So we get these caricatures of what a straight person thinks lesbians are like. And we don't know that we can be what we don't see. That's why representation is so fucking important. I did not know that a lesbian could enjoy wearing makeup and maybe more feminine clothing because I never saw that. I thought I was just a freak and I was confused and I wasn't really gay because I didn't look like the lesbians that I saw. That's really damaging. If my baseline for being queer enough is comparing myself to what I see in media, I'm fucked from the start. And you'll be fucked from the start too. And then we can feel this queer imposter syndrome, like, oh no, what if I'm not really queer? What if I'm just confusing myself, or I'm trying to be queer because I think it's trendy, or because my friend's queer, or what if I'm just convincing myself I'm queer because I'm actually scared of men? I know because I've been there. So what I found is that when people say, I don't feel queer enough, usually what they mean is, I don't feel masculine enough. Society has given us this idea that lesbians look masculine. That's the only way they can be gay, is if they look more like men, because men like women, so women who like women must look like men. The math is not mathing on that one. This point really is the heart of the homophobia. The idea that queer people inherently look different than straight people is homophobic, because it's saying that, oh, those queer people, they can't be like us, they don't look like us, they have to be so far away from us, so different than us. Society has made queerness into this box that you must fit into these stereotypes, because society doesn't want to admit that queer people are the same as them. Some people do happen to fit into these stereotypes, just being themselves, which is fine. But a lot of people are performing the stereotypes. They think that is the way to be queer because they've internalized that homophobia from society. And that's really damaging, because then if we are performing this idea of queerness in our relationships, in our sex lives, in our intimate lives, it creates this wall between us and our partner. Not on purpose, of course, but we are upholding this performance because we think that's what queerness means. If we put the performance down, then we could really connect with our partner, our lover, on a really vulnerable level of, hey, this is me. These are the boxes I happen to fit into. These are the boxes I don't fit into. Am I still good enough? Do you still love me? And that's great sex and relationships. But that can't happen if we're so convinced that being queer means performing this style, this aesthetic, this attitude. We really miss those opportunities for deeper connection. Outside of internalized homophobia, another big reason you can struggle to feel queer enough is because of trauma. Trauma often messes with our self-worth, and this can translate to how confident we feel in our queerness. If you want to learn how that may be blocking your intimacy, I actually created a free quiz that I'll link below, and how you can start to feel more comfortable in your own body and in queer intimacy with others. You only recognize queer people who fit the stereotype because you're looking for that stereotype. There are plenty of people that are queer, flaming homosexuals, that you never clocked because you weren't looking for them, because they didn't stand out enough. So that creates this bias because of the internalized homophobia. And I hate seeing this in the queer community too, because especially with the lesbians, like, oh, that girl's straight, you're too pretty to be gay, you don't look gay, right? And it just sucks. Get that shit out of our community right now. That is internalized homophobia, which doesn't only hurt us, but we're hurting other members in our own community. And y'all, we have been through enough. We get invalidated enough by a lot of men and society at large as femme presenting. So let's not do that to each other, okay? It makes sense to want to signal to other women that you are interested in women. I get that. It feels good to be affirmed by the people around you. To have your identity reflected back to you is a beautiful feeling. When I hear people say, I don't feel queer enough, in my mind, I'm thinking, you don't feel queer enough to what? What is the outcome? What is the desire you're looking for? In my experience with my clients, it's, I don't feel queer enough because women aren't hitting on me, right? I only get hit on by men. I totally get that because I felt the same way. But I want to give you a reality check. I have been in queer spaces where there are only queer women. And guess what? Nobody's hitting on anybody. Even though everyone knows that everyone in there is gay as fuck. But nobody's making moves. It really doesn't have anything to do with being identified as gay or not. It's a layer deeper of women being socialized not to initiate flirtation, to be passive when it comes to the dating experience. So I hate to tell you, but you could be wrapped in a rainbow flag walking down the street and there might not be any women who come up to you. If you want to flirt with women and date women, you're probably going to have to go up to them. Sorry, that's just the way it is, or else we're all just going to wait around for each other. And especially if you're femme, they're probably going to assume that you're straight because they have that internalized homophobia as well, unless they've intentionally processed it and worked on it. So when you release this internalized homophobia, it helps you to stop comparing yourself to other queer people, to this stereotypical queer standard that most of us don't even fit into. And when you skip this step, you'll keep feeling like you have to prove yourself. You have to prove how queer you are. And that's exhausting. And ultimately, like we talked about, that need to prove yourself, that need to perform, it's going to sabotage your intimate life and your relationships. When I first came out, I felt super out of place with the lesbian culture. I had never watched the L Word. I didn't know any of these queer artists. I didn't know what top or bottom or any of those things meant. There was a whole culture that I had not been a part of, and I felt like I had so much to catch up on. When you feel like you're not queer enough based on the experiences that you've had, I want to say that you're queer even if you've never slept with a woman, even if you've never watched the L Word, even if you don't like Fletcher. I personally don't like Fletcher's music. No offense. You're still queer. And if there's this culture that you want to be a part of, which is optional, by the way, you don't have to love queer media, but sometimes it's fun to see yourself reflected in that media, right? So if you want to be a part of that culture, you can, but you're not less queer because you don't know queer references. That's a perspective shift that I had to give myself, and that made learning about queer culture more fun. And honestly, there are a lot of things that don't click with me about queer culture. I don't party that much. I don't really care about drag shows. I don't like wearing rainbow, actually. I think it's loud and busy and kind of ugly. But I'm still queer. It's okay that I don't fit a stereotype. There are other things about me. And when I first came out, obviously my sexuality was a big focus of mine because it was this thing that I wanted to reclaim and explore and celebrate. And I still love celebrating my queerness. I love being queer. I love my wife. I love queer things. But also, a lot of the times, I just sit at home with my dog and read some books and cook dinner. Just normal human shit. And that's cool too. So I used to feel really insecure about my queerness and not feel like I was queer enough. And now I feel really comfortable in who I am as a person, what I like to do, what I don't like to do. I have queer friends, I have straight friends. I don't feel this urgency to prove myself to people that don't know me. And I've accepted that 99% of people will always read me as straight because I'm femme presenting. And that's internalized homophobia on their part and on society's part. But for me, I've gotten most of that out of my system, and I don't spend my nights up at 2 a.m. Googling how to be more gay. I feel really comfortable with how my sexuality expresses itself. So instead of letting internalized homophobia dictate your expression and your beliefs about queerness, you need to identify the sneaky ways that it's showing up, release the shame from your nervous system, and create a solid sense of self-worth. And we create this through what I call the body trust process. Shame creates physiological tension and constriction in your body, in your muscles. So when you learn to read your body signals, it becomes easier to identify what's internalized homophobia, what feels like a tense should, or what you're doing out of fear, and separate who you truly are and what you truly want. And it's no longer this jumbled mess of, is this me? Is this homophobia? How do I tell? And this way you begin to gently release that tension from shame. And it creates this feeling of relaxation in your body. And when your body feels more relaxed, your mind feels more spacious as well, and less frantic trying to validate and figure yourself out, and more of self-acceptance. So you'll notice the urgency of needing to prove you're queer enough or to figure yourself out. Those thoughts of how to be more queer and what do I need to change about myself, those naturally dissipate and turn into more self-acceptance. And in turn, your sexual satisfaction is going to skyrocket because you're no longer holding yourself back trying to fit into a box of what you think queer sex is or what you think queer people do or act in relationship or in sex, and you just get to be yourself. And when your partner gets to feel that authentic primal desire from you, it is so sexy. With this step alone, many clients tell me it feels like they've had years of therapy just in the first month. And with this foundation of ease and self-acceptance in place, we move on to exploring and uncovering what you actually like in the bedroom. Not what you're supposed to like, not what you think queer people should like, or what they're supposed to be into, what they're supposed to be doing, the toys they're supposed to be using. We get rid of all of the shoulds so that you can feel your desire and feel more queer joy and queer pleasure by enjoying exactly what you want. I call this creating your pleasure pathway. Create a map of your authentic turn-ons and turn-offs emotionally, physically, mentally. So you end up genuinely enjoying what you're doing in the bedroom instead of performing or pretending or trying to fit a script. And finally, you want to create confidence in your queer connection, whether you just came out and you're nervous about dating or you're trying to revamp your current relationship. I like to say that competence builds confidence. So when you feel good at something, you're going to feel more confident doing it. So you want to see where your lack of confidence is blocking your intimacy. For example, if you struggle to receive compliments or words of affirmation, or you struggle to allow yourself to receive pleasure or have your partner focus on you in the bedroom, or maybe you even struggle to take time with your own body when you're self-pleasuring. These are all sneaky ways that internalized homophobia can show up. And so you really want to notice that and see if you can take an extra second to absorb whatever pleasure or affirmation is there for you to receive. Because trouble receiving shows up relationally and sexually, where we can feel like we don't deserve to feel good. Taking up this queer space feels wrong or bad or dirty. And we may not be thinking that consciously, but subconsciously we can have those reactions. So in order to build your confidence in your queer connection, you really want to practice receiving, whether that's a compliment or your partner giving you some physical affection or sexual attention. Notice when your guard comes up and notice if you can take a few extra seconds to enjoy it before you shut it down and move on. I'm not saying you have to spend hours, being the center of attention, because that can feel like way too much at first, but try to microdose. Go a little deeper in your queer connection instead of putting that guard up of, ooh, I don't deserve this. And over time, the more that you practice staying in that queer connection, the more confident you're going to be, because not only do you know how to do it, but you've learned that it feels good instead of scary. These are the exact processes that helped me, and it really flips the script on how to feel queer enough just as you are. And that's why I created the feral connection method and why I'm so passionate about it. Instead of just trying to say these empty platitudes like, oh, just love yourself, it allows you to actually weed out the internalized homophobia so that a feeling of acceptance naturally emerges. If this sounds like exactly what you're experiencing and you're wondering if I'm reading your mind, I'm not, but I have been in this exact situation and I am now finally on the other side, feeling super confident in myself and my queerness, and I want that for you too. If you're ready to stop feeling like you need to prove how queer you are, you want to feel comfortable in how to express yourself, your queer desire, and stop comparing yourself to other queer people and always feeling like you come up short, I want to invite you to book an application call with me below. I'll show you how the feral connection method can be personalized to you and how you can become confident in your queerness in and out of the bedroom. One definition for being queer is being strange. And when you think about it, fully accepting yourself is the strangest or queerest thing you can do in a society that just tries to shrink you and tell you to conform.